May 19, 1845, London, England. Two of the most advanced ships ever built set sail for the Arctic. HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, 129 of Britain's finest sailors. Enough food for 3 years. The latest technology of the age. Their mission? To find the Northwest Passage, the legendary route connecting the Atlantic to the Pacific through the frozen North. They were expected back in 2 years. They were never seen again. For over a century, the world asked one question. What happened to the Franklin expedition? This is the story of the greatest mystery in the history of Arctic exploration. Sir John Franklin was 59 years old, an experienced Arctic explorer, a decorated naval officer, a man the British Navy trusted completely. He had already led 2 previous Arctic expeditions. He knew the dangers. He knew the ice. He knew how to survive. Or at least, that's what everyone believed. The British Admiralty spared no expense on this expedition. HMS Erebus and HMS Terror were bomb ships, built to withstand cannon fire. Now they were reinforced with thick oak planking and iron plating. They had steam engines that could power through ice, heated cabins for the crew, libraries filled with books, even a hand organ for entertainment. These weren't just ships. They were floating fortresses designed to conquer the Arctic. The provisions were equally impressive. 8,000 tins of preserved meat, or 200 gallons of liquor, thousands of pounds of flour, sugar, tea, and chocolate. Enough food to last 3 years, maybe longer if they rationed carefully. The crew was hand-picked, 24 officers, 110 sailors and Royal Marines, men who had served in the Royal Navy for years, experienced, disciplined, ready for anything. On the morning of May 19th, thousands gathered at the docks to watch them depart. Flags waved, bands played, families said their goodbyes. Some wives cried. Some sailors joked about bringing back treasures from China. No one imagined this would be the last time they'd see their loved ones alive. The mission was clear. Sail west through Lancaster Sound, navigate the maze of islands in the Canadian Arctic, find a navigable route to the Pacific Ocean, claim the Northwest. Passage for Britain. Return as heroes. It should have taken 2 years, 3 at most. The last confirmed sighting came in late July 1845. 2 whaling ships, the Prince of Wales and the Enterprise, encountered Franklin's expedition in Baffin Bay. The ships were moored to an iceberg, waiting for the passage to clear. The whalers reported that Franklin and his men were in excellent spirits, well-fed, healthy, confident. Franklin even sent letters back to England through the whalers, letters that reached his wife, Lady Jane Franklin. In those letters, he expressed optimism. He believed they would complete the passage within the year. He talked about the scientific observations they would make, the glory that awaited them. Those were the last words anyone ever received from Sir John Franklin. The ships sailed into Lancaster Sound, into the labyrinth of ice and islands, into the unknown, and then silence. By 1847, there was no word from the expedition. The Admiralty wasn't concerned yet. Arctic voyages often took longer than expected. Ice could trap ships for months, sometimes years. They had enough supplies. They would return when the ice cleared. By 1848, worry set in. The expedition should have been back by now. Even if they were delayed, they should have sent word. Hunting parties, Inuit contacts, something. Lady Jane Franklin refused to accept that her husband was lost. She pressured the Admiralty to send search parties. She offered rewards. She wrote to newspapers. She rallied public support. Finally, in 1848, the British Navy launched the first search expeditions. 3 separate teams, searching from different directions. They searched the waters Franklin was known to have passed through. They left caches of food on islands in case Franklin's men were stranded. They left messages carved in stone. They found nothing. In 1850, the search intensified. Multiple expeditions combed the Arctic. American ships joined the search. Private expeditions funded by Lady Franklin herself. Dozens of ships, hundreds of men, all looking for any trace of Franklin. Then in August 1850, one of the search parties made a discovery. On a desolate strip of land called Beachy Island, they found something. 3 graves. The graves were carefully marked. Wooden headboards carved with names and dates. John Torrington died January 1st, 1846. John Hartnell died January 4th, 1846. William Brain died April 3rd, 1846. 3 men from Franklin's expedition dead within the first year. The searchers also found other evidence: scattered food tins, torn clothing, a forge where the crew had done metalwork. Clear signs that Franklin's ships had spent the winter of 1845-46 at Beechy Island. But where had they gone after that? Where were the other 126 men? The graves gave few answers. The search continued. In 1854, a Scottish explorer named Dr. John Ray was surveying the Arctic coast. He encountered a group of Inuit hunters near Pelly Bay. When Ray showed them British Navy buttons and asked if they had seen white men, the Inuit told him a disturbing story. 4 years earlier, in the spring of 1850, they had seen a group of about 40 white men. The men were traveling south on foot, dragging boats across the ice. They looked sick, starving, desperate. The Inuit tried to help them, offering seal meat, but the white men pushed on. The Inuit said all of the men died. Their bodies were found later that year, scattered along the coast and on an island the Inuit called Kikiktak. But the Inuit revealed something else, something that shocked Dr. Ray, something that would horrify Victorian England. There were signs of cannibalism. The Inuit had found human remains with the flesh cut away, bones that had been broken open to extract the marrow skulls that showed signs of being boiled. Dr. Ray returned to England with this information. He also brought back artifacts the Inuit had recovered: silver plates, forks and spoons engraved with officers' initials, a medal belonging to one of Franklin's crew. When Ray's report was published, Britain erupted in outrage. The idea that British naval officers, gentlemen, would resort to cannibalism was unthinkable, impossible, an insult to their memory. Charles Dickens himself wrote articles defending Franklin's men. He claimed the Inuit were lying, that they had murdered the sailors, and made up the cannibalism story to cover their crimes. Lady Jane Franklin refused to believe it. She continued funding search expeditions. She demanded the Admiralty keep looking. In 1859, another search party, led by Captain Francis Leopold McClintock, made the most significant discovery yet. On King William Island, McClintock's team found a stone cairn. Inside was a metal cylinder. Inside the cylinder was a piece of paper, a standard Royal Navy form filled out twice. The first message was dated May 28, 1847. It was routine. It stated that HMS Erebus and Terror had wintered at Beechy Island in 1845-46, that they had sailed south through Peel Sound, that everything was well, that Sir John Franklin commanded the expedition. But written in the margins, dated April 25, 1848, was a second message. This one told a different story. Sir John Franklin had died on June 11, 1847. The ships had been trapped in ice off King William Island since September 12, 1846. They had been locked in the ice for a year and a half. 9 officers and 15 men were dead. The survivors, 105 men, were abandoning the ships. They were going to march south toward a Hudson Bay trading post over 600 miles away. The message was signed by Captain Francis Crozier, now in command. That was the last official record ever found. McClintock's team searched King William Island. They found a lifeboat mounted on a sledge. Inside were 2 skeletons, surrounded by bizarre items: books, silk handkerchiefs, silver teaspoons, heavy objects that served no purpose for survival. Why were dying men dragging luxuries across the ice? They also found more bodies scattered along the southern coast, some in naval uniforms, some partially buried, some lying in the open. The evidence suggested that the men had tried to walk to safety, but they were already too weak, too sick, too far from help. They died where they fell. Over the following decades, more evidence emerged. Inuit testimony described finding one of the ships sunk in shallow water. Another ship had drifted south before sinking. Scattered camps, more bodies, more stories of starving white men. But the central question remained unanswered. Why did the expedition fail so catastrophically? In the 1980s, scientists exhumed the 3 graves on Beechy Island. The permafrost had preserved the bodies almost perfectly. Autopsies revealed something shocking. All 3 men had extremely high levels of lead in their bodies, toxic levels. Lead poisoning. The source. The tin cans. The 8,000 tins of preserved food had been sealed with lead solder. Over time, the lead leached into the food. The crew had been slowly poisoning themselves with every meal. Lead poisoning causes confusion, weakness, paranoia, poor decision-making. It would explain why Franklin's experienced officers made fatal errors, why they abandoned their ships too early, why they tried to walk 600 miles through the Arctic instead of staying with the ships. But lead poisoning wasn't the only problem. The ships had become trapped in some of the worst ice in the Arctic. Thick, multi-year ice that doesn't melt in summer. Franklin had sailed into a death trap. The passage he chose, west of King William Island, was actually the worst possible route. If he had gone east, the expedition might have survived. Bad luck, bad decisions, bad timing. By September 1846, when the ships became trapped, Franklin's men still had 2 years of food. They could have survived. They could have waited for the ice to break up. They could have hunted seals like the Inuit. But Sir John Franklin died in June 1847. The leadership fell to Captain Crozier, who made the decision to abandon ship in April 1848. Why did they abandon the ships with food still aboard? Some historians believe scurvy had devastated the crew. Others think the lead poisoning had made rational thought impossible. Some think the steam engines had broken down, filling the ships with toxic coal smoke. Whatever the reason, 105 men walked away from the only shelter they had. They dragged heavy boats. They carried useless items. They marched toward a trading post they would never reach. They scattered across King William Island. Some made it 60 miles south. Some turned back toward the ships. Most died within weeks. The Inuit testimony was accurate. In their final days, some men did resort to cannibalism, desperate, starving, beyond hope. They did what they had to do to survive a few more days, but it wasn't enough. By 1850, all 129 men were dead. For over 160 years, the ships remained lost. Dozens of expeditions searched for them, using sonar, underwater robots, satellite imagery, nothing. Then in 2014, Canadian researchers using sonar detected a ship on the ocean floor in Queen Maud Gulf. It was HMS Erebus. 2 years later, in 2016, they found HMS Terror in Terror Bay. Both ships were remarkably well preserved, sitting upright on the seafloor, masts still standing, artifacts still inside, dishes in the galley, bottles in storage. The ships had become time capsules, frozen in the moment they sank. Divers have explored both wrecks. They've recovered artifacts, officers' possessions, navigation instruments, personal items, each one telling a small part of the story. But even with the ships found, mysteries remain. Why did Franklin choose the western route around King William Island? What killed Sir John Franklin in June 1847? Why did Captain Crozier abandon the ships when they still had food and shelter? Did any men survive longer than 1850? Some Inuit oral histories claim that a few sailors lived with Inuit families for several years, learning to hunt, learning to survive, but eventually dying from their illnesses. Were these stories true or legends? We may never know. The Franklin expedition remains one of history's greatest tragedies. 129 men, equipped with the best technology of their age, sent on a mission that should have been routine. Instead, they all perished in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. Their story is a reminder. Nature doesn't care about your technology. The Arctic doesn't care about your confidence. Survival requires more than equipment. It requires knowledge, respect, and sometimes just luck. So John Franklin and his men didn't have that luck. They sailed into the ice looking for glory. They found only death. And for 170 years, the Arctic kept their secrets. If this mystery left you wanting more, hit that subscribe button. There are more unsolved disappearances waiting to be told, more expeditions that vanished without a trace, more questions that history has never answered. What do you think happened to the Franklin expedition? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, remember, some mysteries are never meant to be solved.